thrilled you all came. This is a great turnout. I really, really appreciate it. Little announcement on dessert. Dessert's going to be about 25 minutes. So when it does come, it'll be there. And don't worry if we're in the program, just get up and help yourself. It's a very informal thing, right? So we're starting a little early because we were a bit ahead of time. This is the first time in history we've been ahead of time, which is fantastic. And I'd like to give a little bit more time to introduce the guests, of which we have a few this evening, all right? But before we get going, for those, I don't think we have anybody online, right? So perfect. So we can skip the next slide. So it is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, get under your tables now. Okay, thank you. And first of all, we just want to thank our sponsors and enterprise members. So enterprise members are companies that have committed to SIM with multiple members, okay? Which is fantastic. We love that support. But our annual sponsor, silver sponsor at the moment is Expedient. And I know that Sean is here. So thank you. If you want to stand up, I think there's a couple of your guys, right? So thank you so much, Expedient. Really appreciate it. You guys are the best. And our enterprise members, who we got from Avnet? Well, I know we got Mark, who's on the board, and a couple of folks, right? Discount Tire, I don't think we've got, Gary Desai was supposed to be here this evening, right? And he did confirm, so that's a shame, but he may turn up. Copper Point, I think we do, yes, absolutely, thank you so much. Barrett, I don't think we have the Barrett folks with us. Benchmark, are new, so they're probably not here just yet, but they did host last month's social event. Who went to that one? Very good. Well, thanks very much to our friend Scott Highcar and the folks at Benchmark. They've committed to being enterprise members this year. Rogers Corporation, that's down to Bipin. Everybody remembers Bipin, of course, which I handpicked to be my successor as president of the chapter, and promptly disappeared after 8 months, which is why I'm stood here. But anyway, he's recommitted to SIM. Very pleased for that, and he's got numerous members. And myself, I do have a day job. I work for Packard Watch, a cybersecurity company out of Scottsdale, and we actually do have our 2 enterprise members with us tonight. We have Jeff Severson, who you saw in the panel a couple of months ago, right? Who's our CIO, and then Michael McAndrews is our Chief Technology and Security Officer. Michael gave a very interesting presentation to the SIM group 2 years ago, maybe, on the dark web, which has been a never forgotten presentation. Michael is a former FBI special agent. He was on the fly team called the CAT team, Cyber Action Team, I think, which was, so the guys who are going to arrest people in hotels in Budapest with their fingers on the keyboard, he was one of those guys, right? And we think we might get him back to do that dark web talk, because it is, and he's updated it, it is fabulous, right? Right, so that's that. We move on, please. Of course, our signature sponsor for tonight is E360, and we do have our friends from E360 tonight. You want to just say a couple of words, Grant?
Well, thank you. You just threw me under the bus there. I wasn't expecting it quite then. No, I'm Grant Cowie. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts for the Desert region for E360. We are a company based out of Southern California, about $400 million company focusing on cybersecurity, DevOps, FinOps, as well as a number of other areas, digital and data, big play for us as well. So pretty much across the across the whole gamut as far as IT goes. I have an amazing team in Phoenix. I'll have Jason Ciordi stand up, say hi. Trevor Jones, Kevin Cohen, where are you? Tony. Sorry, he's I was thinking of Cyber Trevor. I was trying to think of, he's Cyber Trevor. Dr. Trevor, Cyber Trevor. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, we're about a $400 million company, about 167 engineers across the board, 250 employees total. It's just a great company. I've had the opportunity to build this region. So just looking to be a part of SIM and other chapters around town. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Let's show our appreciation for them sponsoring tonight. Thank you so much. And Grant is very special to me because he comes from a country who knows what rugby is and cricket is, which is fabulous. Right. So I think we have quite a few guests this evening. Obviously, the 360 guys have just been introduced. So I'm going to just pass the mic around for folks who are other guests. I know you're on the panel, so you're going to probably introduce yourself anyway. So we're going to wait. Who else do we have as a guest this evening who hasn't introduced themselves? So you've got to say who you are, who you're with, what do you do, and who's brought you this evening. Who brought you this evening? You are the guest of whom?
Hello, you lot. This is Amit Mutkal this side, and I'm a senior vice. Oh, it's okay, right? So, right. So I'm senior vice president in Marsh & McLennan for data and analytics. Who brought me? I'm a guest of Tanay Karmakar, and what I do. I basically do data and analytics, make sure that insurance brokerage firm like Marsh & McLennan gets an advantage in data part, and just help them out with that. So.
Hi, my name is Sahil Sabharwal. I'm with American Express. I'm the vice president for Business Insights, and Tane brought me over here today. Thank you.
Now's your time, mate.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of work with Amex GBT several years ago. They were I think at the time they were one of the largest NetSuite implementations. I worked on a contract with Deloitte with them. So nice to meet you. Oh yeah, very, very, very good. So my name's Troy Oltmans. I was brought here by Troy Curtis here. I currently work for Alma Investment Group. We are a multi-state operator in the cannabis industry, and I'm also starting my own business, Tech Centric Solutions LLC. So just trying to make it happen. Make it happen. There you go.
You could, hey, here's a plug, make it. The it could be IT, right? Yeah. Do we have?
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Garris. I was invited here by Grant Cowie. I work for a company called Major Rail, which is in the BPO space. We are a global company that basically deals with technical call centers and help desks. My title is Global Infrastructure Service Delivery Manager, and I've been with them for about 1.5 years.
Thank you very much. Right. Who do we have? Do we have anybody else on this table? I'm not sure we do. Right. And we have you.
Hi, my name is John Dudd. I work for a company called UNFI. We're a large wholesaler of food. Most people don't know who we are, but our supermarkets that we sell to, like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Key Foods, etc. I was invited here by Grant Cowie from E360, and I'm the CISO at UNFI.
I love the food you deliver there. We don't know you. Yes, we know you. Oh, there we go. Oh, and Jeff.
Yeah. So Paul Elliott from Republic Services. We are a waste and recycling company. I think we are the #2 largest company headquartered in Phoenix behind Avnet. So yeah, Fortune 300 company headquartered here in Phoenix, waste and recycling. I was invited by Grant and the E360 team. I'm responsible for most of the digital transformation at Republic. And we've got Jeff, who's a cloud engineer on our team, who's going to be on the panel tonight, I believe.
He is, so we'll get to meet him soon. I think that leaves my good friend Mark, right? I'd like you to say a couple of words and what your former role was as well. Mark is a longtime friend of SIM and former member.
Awesome, thanks. Mark Morawski, CTO for a small but growing fintech out of Vietnam. So I spent the last 2 years growing a company, think of it as PayPal for Vietnam, essentially payments, fintech, insurance, things like that in the ecosystem of Southeast Asia. After 2 years of living abroad, I'm back in Scottsdale. So definitely open for opportunities. If anybody has a fledgling CTO need, something broken needs fixed, or things that need scaled, that's what I do. So thank you.
Former CIO, Ticketmaster. There you go. So all the problems with the concert, Taylor Swift, you know where to go to? Was it Taylor Swift? Legacy systems, Mark, is that right? Very cool. Thank you. It's that time, ladies and gentlemen. So those who are guests, please consider becoming members of SIM. Those who are already members of SIM, please renew if you have not renewed already, okay? And if you renew before the end of this month, you will get a 10% discount. I want to just make a couple of points here. We have not increased our dues since 2012. I mean, that's just criminal, actually, right? But it is crazy value for money, right? Crazy value for money. But what I will say is with Sim National is going to raise their rates in 2024. So we're going to have to, unfortunately, match that. But for next year, we're not raising them still. So now's the time to get in. You're going to get that discount, but look at the amazing things you get, right? You not only get these kind of dinners, which I hope you recognize are fantastic dinners, great event, great environments, great food, great drink, great people. We also have social networking events. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit more this year coming up. We got a lot of feedback from members in the survey that said what we really like about SIM. We love the dinners, we love the formal presentations, the learning, but we also love the networking opportunities, right? We want to build a community of IT leaders here in Arizona. So we're making a lot more opportunities for networking. So we're going to sort of do, we're going to skip by skip on a month. So on a month, we're going to do formal dinner, presentation, panel. Following month, we'll have a networking social, right? A little more relaxed. You can get to meet a few people, get to chat to more people, nice food, nice drink. So we're going to try to get that established for this coming year. We've already got the first few months lined up. We also do a lot of give back and charitable work. We just did an incredible session at St. Mary's Food Bank last week. It was wonderful, absolutely terrific. Great ways of giving back to our communities, which is part of what SIM is about. We also have access to partner events. So there is a CIO conference here every year hosted by Hunter Muller called the HMG Senior Leadership Summit. As part of our relationship with Hunter's group, we get access to that, right? So you're going to get full access to the HMG conference. That's going to happen in March. That's a full day event, and all the SIM members will get access to that. We also have preferential access to all of the Arizona Tech Council events as well. In fact, I was hoping Ron would be here. Ron Schott is our liaison with the Arizona Tech Council. And through him, we, by and large, get member rates for most of the things in Arizona Tech Council. So that is terrific. We've also got a lot of SIM national things. So we have all the national conferences SIM puts on. I just got back from, last month, got back from the executive leadership retreat in Palm Springs with about 200 CIOs and CISOs from around the country. Absolutely terrific event. But you get access to those. We have a lot of interest groups. So there's an interest group in cybersecurity. There's an interest group in project delivery and other sorts of things. So you can actually network with colleagues nationally, not just locally. Our Advanced Practice Council is our high-end research and development team. So a lot of the technical and scientific members of SIM meet across the nation to talk about very leading, cutting-edge technology advances. And we also have the SIM Leadership Institute, which, if you want to just step onto the next slide, please, TJ. So a lot of people heard of RLF. RLF is an award-winning executive management development program, recognized as one of the top leadership development programs by CIO magazine. It's been going a long time. It's very well known. But actually, there are 3 other things going on in the Institute, Leadership Institute. One is the emerging leader development. These are the people who are going to make that first transition from a technical role to a management role. We have seen many a career dashed on the rocks of becoming a manager from being a technical person, right? without the necessary training. Right? It can be a brilliant step. It can be a nightmare. That program is a complete remote program, and it allows those folks who are just beginning to consider a step into management from a technical role. That is that development for them, right? That's the emerging leader development. There is the IT management and leadership professional training. So this is like middle managers, right? These are the people who are getting into their first real middle manager role, right? That is incredible training. Again, it's online self-paced training. The Regional Leadership Forum is the famous one. That's the one about people getting their first move into executive management, right? First people becoming CIOs, CISOs, right? That's that program. Our good friend Bob here is an alum of that course, right? And you would vouch for how brilliant it is, right? It's phenomenal. You've created lifelong friendships and relationships. And the final one is the executive RLF. This is essentially like an MBA, right? This is the already existing executive leader who wants to further develop their skill set within that role. And as you can see from the sort of indicative pricing on the right, which by the way, you as a SIM member, you get discounts off at least 2 of those. These are not expensive, right? This is one of the significant advantages of being a SIM member, right? Access to this. So if you want to develop your leadership teams from the very beginning all the way through, you have access to it through this program. Thanks, TJ. All righty. That brings us to our main event. And very, very pleased, as we mentioned before, to have our good friends at E360, Grant and the team, sponsor us for tonight. And they're going to host a panel. And this panel is going to be about cloud. But very interestingly, it's going to be about FinOps, which is a term I had not heard actually previously. But I've certainly experienced, right? The costs of moving to the cloud can sometimes run away with you, right? So how do we manage, how do we understand the costs of the cloud and how do we contain it? We're going to have this panel is going to be chaired by Kevin Cohn, who is the Vice President of Cloud and DevOps Services at E360. And Kevin is a seasoned cloud and DevOps automation architect with more than 20 years of experience in designing, architecting, and deploying and optimizing complex IT solutions for large enterprise organizations. So I'm going to ask Kevin to come up here and then assemble the panel team and get the panel team to introduce themselves. And just an administrative point, folks who need the bathrooms, you just go back out the door straight to the end of the corridor and you'll see them right in front of you. The bar is going to remain open. Feel free to enjoy yourself. This is the holiday season. And the dessert will come out, and don't worry about, you won't interrupt the panel. It'll be based here, okay? Kevin, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's really important note to know where the bathrooms are, that's for sure. So thank you for that. I want to have the panel come on up. And while they do, I'll just give a little bit of an overview. I've been at E360 for about 18 months or so. And before that, I was at another solutions integrator, and I've been working with the cloud integration side for a long time, automation, orchestration. Some of my main customers have been Cisco, Apple, Facebook. I'm from the Bay Area myself. And so I deal with a lot with the tech companies up there. And then when I came to E360, we took on a lot of healthcare. We have Sutter, Kaiser, a number of other accounts that we work with. And so a lot of the context for the questions that I brought up here are from me meeting with these executives of these companies and understanding a little bit of the challenges that they're having us try to answer for them or try to solve for them. And so that's just a little bit of a background about what you're going to hear from this panel. So with that in mind, let's go across the panel and have them introduce themselves, starting with Trevor Hogan here.
Hi, I am Trevor Hogan, or AKA Cyber Trevor. I would love to be the CTO, but actually I'm a field CISO. My background is mainly out of manufacturing finance, manufacturing finance, education, a little bit of defense. And I've had the pleasure of actually working across the world from places like oil and gas fields and trying to figure out how to connect those all up to just keeping an Oracle system running on the back end and trying to keep organizations up and running. So I came out of operations and then went into consulting. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, my name is Ian McClarty. I'm president of Phoenix Snap, and we're a local provider of network services. We're basically the hub for all the metro connectivity that's going on in the Valley. So a lot of the hyperscalers use us right now for direct connect, interconnect. So right now we have AWS, Google, and also Microsoft Express routes being built out. And we make it really easy to get carriers you may never even heard of internationally. That's one side of the business. The other side of the business is really around web scale. So we do a lot of global web scale out, pure infrastructure services. Our latest product is called Bare Metal Cloud, and it's really an easy API way of delivering dedicated infrastructure to an end user.
Yeah, Jeff Gardner. Clearly my LinkedIn profile picture is a little out of date, so not quite the same. I think I'm gonna go 09, maybe 2010. So I know I need to. So I'm an engineer by trade. I do a lot of architecture in the cloud as well, and I kind of span all the way from hands-on keyboard implementation and solution delivery, all the way up to strategy, vision, architecture, kind of ride that whole architect elevator from the ground floor up to the penthouse. I've been doing this about 25 years, so happy to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Great, thanks. Appreciate the panel here and their willingness to kind of be our victims tonight. And we're excited to jump right into the subjects that are being brought up. But that said, I'm a pretty interactive individual. So don't be afraid if I hand you the microphone out there too, because there's a wealth of information and knowledge in this room. I had the pleasure to meet a few of you earlier tonight and speak with you. And I was incredibly impressed with some of the people that I was able to just briefly meet. So I'm pretty sure that this group would benefit to hear from, a lot of the wealth of knowledge that's also in this room. So please, this is going to be an interactive session. We look forward to hearing from you. Yeah, I'm talking to you, American Express. So, all right, great. So next slide. Oh, okay. So in the top left corner, I have the category that we're talking about here. And then I have the set the table sentence, and then we have the actual question. So companies are debating how to adopt and integrate hyperscalers into their technology frameworks today. Some are isolating certain workloads in the cloud, hunting and picking and choosing certain workloads that you're going to adopt and put up in the cloud, while others are saying, I'm going all in, right? A lot of all in doesn't exactly happen unless you were born in the cloud. But we definitely have this conversation a lot. And usually the all-in stems from an impetus like the board says, we need to get to the cloud, right? So what are the key criteria a business leader should consider when making cloud adoption decisions? And when we start in the middle, Ian.
First, you got to really understand your workload. And that's very tough for a lot of companies, actually. It sounds easier than said and done. Also, you need to do some skill set assessments on your actual people, because a lot of times you find when you go all in on cloud native technologies, you need to retool your staff or hire people that can train up your staff. Typically, you're not going to swap out your entire staff, or it just doesn't happen, right? We actually see some job roles being created right now, like coaching for cloud native opportunities. So like US Bank is a good example. I met an actual coach that does nothing but DevOps, cloud native training to try to retool all of their engineers, all their software development engineers that have been doing mainframe applications. You're talking about 5,000 developers that they want to take and be able to retool from mainframe into cloud native technologies. That's a huge undertaking for a company. So you got to really look at culture. That's another thing. You weren't even talking about technology yet, right? And then really have a good handle on your assets. What are your assets that are really being delivered right now? And that's also tough for a lot of companies. A lot of companies don't have a good handle on what are their actual assets being delivered, not just physical infrastructure, but when you start getting more into the virtual side of the house, it gets a little more difficult. And then you get into the container side of the house, forget it, right? Applications are basically everywhere now. So a really good understanding of the workload, looking at your staff, and then having a good understanding of your assets, where your IT assets are located.
So one thing I'll say that we've done on our journey to cloud is, right, we've been able to innovate within our AWS ecosystem in ways you could have never done on premise without just enormous amount of cost. So I understand all the other pieces of it, but if you want, like we did, we had a very tight timeline. We had a very aggressive business partner, and they expected results to be delivered very quickly. And the only way we could have done that, the only way we could have ended was to go full in on AWS on a particular app. Like you said, like not everything needs to go all in on a particular couple of applications where it made a lot of sense to do so. We were able to deliver very quickly at a very low cost and very innovative features within that platform.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both y'all. I think number one is training. People are afraid of the cloud, so you need to retool your people. I think you got into the architecture side of it, and I think this is a very critical piece, is that when you're designing for cloud, you're going to build it very differently. And I think number one mistake that I've seen, it doesn't matter if this is government or private, people want to build it the same way they built it on-prem, and they kind of skip the lessons of virtualization, where, you know, if you had a 12-way box and a terabyte of RAM, you don't virtualize with the 12-way box and a terabyte of RAM. You build it to the workload. And then when you shift it into the cloud, typically people are going and just picking it up out of your VMware environment and putting it into Azure and doing the exact same thing again. And it runs your bills through the roof. And I mean, you're just burning CPU. So you architect differently. You got to think differently about how you're deploying these things. You get the capabilities that are wonderful that you don't have to worry about. It's very redundant. And I think the last piece that people kind of have been post-COVID hangover is they threw all this stuff in the cloud and they're like, you know, I don't even know if my cloud is secure. I think I built it right. And what's interesting about the conversations that I've been having recently is I built my Azure tenant 5 years ago. Default, we took everything, we did it, we learned, we built all these things. We know we have security problems. How do I fix that now? And if you've been watching things like SolarWinds fundamentally changed the way you configure your Azure environment because of the way they manipulated it. So the recommendations and defaults, which might have been right 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 6 months ago, are no longer the defaults. You have to go back and you have to look at your configurations, and things that are now recommended and turned off by default may be on in your environment. And so you want to get a look at that. So that's the piece for me to add on to all of this, is essentially you got to make sure you understand the security posture of your environment, the fundamental aspect of it, and keep on looking at it, because it's changing every day, and the environment, new code comes out, new features come out, new bits, new everything, and it's literally every day. And what was secure yesterday is not secure today. So get something around and get visibility around that configuration.
Is there anybody out here that has had to deal with this cloud adoption question in their business? And anything that you would add to this? A hit, don't be shy, man. You were so here. I'm handing you the mic, all right?
And I guess we are somewhat in the journey. We have a multi-cloud strategy as everyone. So we are also kind of split over many places. And it's really interesting when I saw FinOps, because we're just getting the hang of FinOps to understand what it is going to be. But I would love to hear, like, what was the change management moment you went through as you were sharing the experience, saying, hey, when you're starting in that journey or you're building, you don't know what's the right way to do on cloud because you don't have those right expertise. So we are building, learning, turning around. What was your journey around that? Like, how did you go through that? It would be really interesting.
I'll start with it. So I spend a lot of time working with the companies that actually have to stand up this and are doing this for the first time. So from the consultant perspective, I think that the main piece is start small, understand, build confidence, and then build out. The second thing that you really need to understand from a change management perspective is when you have no limitations on resources, meaning there's no limit to the number of drives you can slap in or what you can provision, you got to learn how to control the capacity and the management of that. If you give developers a data lake with a couple terabytes of space, they're going to write to it and they're going to use the hell out of it. And so the idea is, how do you set the flags when people are doing things, not intentionally like, oh, I really don't care how much we're spending. It's really more of put in alarms that basically say, hey, you just wrote 5 terabytes of data and then you cloned it. And so your bill is going to go from 5,000 for storage to 25,000 for storage, and you're not going to realize it until after it clears. So
yeah, for us, we're a very product focused company, right? So all the IT that we do is to produce product. So for us, it really has been putting proper guardrails around products that we produce, and that's through product management. So our product managers are really the ones that are doing guardrail, whether it be financial guardrails or even technology guardrails. So they kind of wear multiple hats. You kind of have to have a business owner in there. Some companies are more inbound, right? Internal product development. You may not have that role, but you do have to have some kind of supporting infrastructure, some kind of DevOps team, somebody that's kind of ahead of that team, or somebody that's responsible and is really looking at the financials at the end of the day, because that's going to be your best guardrail. Really, is financial services. I mean, there's always a financial hook, right? It has to make sense to the business to be able to scale out. Otherwise, no matter how good the technology is, if the product that's being developed, internal or external, it's going to get killed. Your CFO is going to come in someday and they're going to squash it, right? So
we came from a very application development centric process, as opposed to coming more from the infrastructure side of the house. But it does require a lot of expertise, like these guys have said, understanding those costs, understanding the implications of making some of those design decisions. We happened to get lucky and had some people who had done it at a prior company with less success. So we came with some lesson learned for sure. One of the things that app developers tend to bring more than like an infrastructure person might bring is a lot of automation. So we had a lot of automation, and we chose a very sort of cloud native serverless architecture. And so a lot of that goes away. So if you're starting out small, I definitely recommend sort of starting with some of those cloud tools that are built into whatever platform you choose, going very cloud native as opposed to trying to be cloud agnostic, because you're going to get a lot of benefit just from those cloud native tools. But then, yeah, a lot of automation was key on our side in terms of shutting things down, making sure we're watching billing alerts, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Why don't we go on to TJ to the next slide. So this one is more down Trevor's alley a little bit, but this is a major point that gets brought up often with our customers. And this goes to, now that we've identified cloud adoption requirements and applications that we can host up there, there's an inevitable collision that takes place in our organizations between what we want to do in the cloud and what our traditional posture is from a security standpoint. So how do we maintain the velocity of our projects while also in turn working with the CISO and the security organization to make sure that they're happy, for lack of a better term, with what we're doing in the cloud and that we are compliant with their requirements. And I would say that oftentimes we are running into situations where the security posture wasn't built with the cloud in mind yet. It might be a more legacy. And so this could be a learning experience for both organizations. Let's just put it that way. So what are some of the ways to accommodate security concerns without stifling innovation when adopting cloud? Jeff, why don't we start with you?
Pass. So yeah, I have a great story on this, because this, again, we started from a very app development perspective, and they just sort of spun up a cloud on someone's credit card. And, that was 2016. Thank you for the thumbs up from. Yeah, so it's like, there's nothing there. It took us a long time and a lot of sort of painful experiences around, being completely over provisioned, people having, absolutely full administrative access into God knows what. So it was very painful, but yeah, definitely you got to get with your InfoSec team. You got to have a partnership with that group because it is a brand new skill set. The tools that they've got in place are probably not going to work when, if you go too far. So, when all their tools are agent based, you can't install an agent on a Lambda or a Google function or whatever it is, right? There's a completely, new set of tools, a completely brand new platform way of thinking about it. And if you don't get a partnership with those people, with those groups that are stakeholders in all this, you're going to have some very painful experiences. So start early, try not to let it get way too far out of hand. So don't let us be a cautionary tale.
No, we've been through this many times with our clients, and one thing that lessons learned there, right? So one thing we did on purpose was make sure we had security people in our DevOps teams. They're right in that team. They are part of the team. So that's a bridge, and it starts some of that collaboration, because a lot of times the DevOps or very developer focused group, it needs a middle ground with some of the InfoSec people. So having that bridge there is very important, and it helps have some of that collaboration, some of that trust between the teams to be created. And obviously proper planning, ahead of time, trying to plan as much as you can, trying to involve them in the workflow before and after, not just like after, is also very helpful. So having them be part of the scope meetings, at least representation from InfoSec there, maybe not the entire, obviously you want the entire teams, but at least some representation there is very helpful as well.
I could talk for hours on this, and I came from the infrastructure side, so I have a view on a lot of things, but I'm going to say something that I hope you take away from this. The way to be successful with this is trust but verify. And what I mean by that is you're handing your environment over to a bunch of developers who are learning to be infrastructure people and are learning to be storage people. And if you don't trust them, they're going to go around you anyway. So the idea here is if you want to be successful in being able to secure it, you say, look, I trust you. I'm going to verify what you're doing. I'm not going to tell you what you can and cannot do. I'm going to put tooling in place to get the observability around it. But in reality is I'm going to take a step back and let you architect what makes sense for the business and for your architecture. And then we're going to verify that everything is actually locked down or kept in a reasonable risk scenario. And why I say that is I see GRC teams, I see security teams learning the tooling. They're all trying to put old world kind of concepts, especially in finance. We all basically are used to checking boxes, and they're reskilling themselves just as much as your security people are. So, how do you prove to your auditor? They're reskilling as well. They don't understand this stuff. And so the idea is trust but verify. So take a step back, understand what they're doing, let them be creative, let them do what they're doing and drive innovation and speed, but put a verification step in place so that you can come back and say, are we secure today? Yeah, I think so. Or, that other bank got popped. Are we going to be popped the same way? Maybe, maybe not. Here's the changes we're going to make. That's how I would approach this, because otherwise it's too draconian. You're going to tell people what to do, and that never works.
I didn't actually expect this, but this is in my opinion, a great portrayal. We have adopt with the credit card right here. And then we have, so very much more regressive, I guess. And then we have Ian, who's fully adopted DevSecOps, which is very progressive, right? In the posture and how to integrate cyber and security right into your environment. And then we got Trevor, who's been bit so many times and seen so many things. He's just coming right out and telling you, yeah. So it's kind of fun to hear those three things. Is there anything else that we might have missed? Anybody else have anything to add to that? All right, yeah, Simon.
Thank you for explaining DevSecOps, first of all. Secondly, dessert is here. So don't feel shy, right? Don't feel shy. It smells great. It smells like apple strudel or something. It smells amazing. Smells amazing. Thank you for the, have I? Well, yeah, cloud security, right? I think it's beyond just open S3 buckets nowadays, right? I guess. So anyway, I'll pass over.
TJ, we able to go to the next slide? That'd be great. Okay. So this is under containing costs. And no, we're not to FinOps just yet. That'll be the next slide. So there's a distinction here, and we'll get to that. So there's no secret that CIOs and their staff are under tremendous pressure to contain budgets and spend, right? We often call this do more with less. We hear that mantra all the time. So what are some of the cloud and automation options available to managers in the C-suite to balance costs with their need to deliver solutions effectively for the business? So maybe we'll start again with Ian and we'll go around.
Wow. So there's, especially if we're going hyperscale right now, there's a lot of good companies that's all they do, right? That they will do assessments on your invoice left and right. That's actually one good place to start, is actually looking at your invoice, because they can be very cryptic. So having a good understanding, having somebody in your team that can be that bridge with external expertise, because there are companies that do this in an automated fashion, in a consultative fashion, in a hybrid manner, right? So I would definitely start looking at the invoicing side of the house first, and then on the understanding what the platform that you're using, whatever hyperscaler you are, or even platforms out there, they always have some kind of cost controlling measures, right? You can automate cost controls in place as well, meaning you can turn off services that are not being used. You can set up guardrails around services that you don't want to automatically scale out. Maybe you want to actually have human interaction in those services on purpose. So there are different guardrails you can put in place also. But you need to understand what platform tools are available to you first. And then a lot of people just start with their invoice. I mean, that's number one. Number two is look at the platform and then seeing what's available to you from a toolsmithing perspective, because even being able to leverage some of those tools themselves can be whole projects on their own. So.
Yeah, that's a great one. Look at the invoice. That's an amazingly simple way to actually know how much you're paying. So I would say, yeah, understanding it, knowing what's in what account, which region, depending on kind of your cloud provider. Ownership is probably the second one. We didn't do this very sort of thoughtfully, but it sort of fell on my lap to kind of be the guy that owns the invoice for a long time. So you really just need a single point of person, regardless of what workload's running in which account, who kind of owns that invoice, needs to understand it very deeply, needs to understand what teams are doing within there and keeping a very close eye on it. So sometimes, you know, they can create automation around that, but great point. That person needs to be looking at that invoice probably every single day, right? Like these guys have both said, is this stuff changes so quickly. Like you don't even know when some person has spun up like an enormous database because they were testing some proof of concept and they ran through it. Right there, he knows, right? Ran through a $10,000 bill running one freaking database just because he was playing with it, left it running. So someone needs to be there basically every day. If you don't have a daily alert and you don't have a single like point of contact or a single neck to choke, if you will, then you're going to have all kinds of problems. You have to have deep ownership around that, because cloud can save you money, but cloud can cost you a lot of money really quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah, it definitely can. You flip a bit and suddenly you got a huge bill. You know, I'm going to go back to a little bit of old school here, and it's not about a function or feature or something you turn on. It's actually about communication. It is a skill that you're going to need to have, is somebody who understands why it's being architected the way it is and what is the cost outcomes to these things. And that feedback loop needs to be built back into the teams. If you just let the development pods go, they're going to develop and they're going to just get the item off their pick list and move forward. It might not be the most efficient way, but when you're deploying multiple applications and you're learning from each one about how to get speed, how to reduce cost, how to make it simpler to maintain, get the high availability that you need, feeding those lessons back in so that the other groups can actually learn from it is very, very important. And so now it's not about architecting for speed or whatever else that you want to try to get down to. Your enterprise architecture kind of concept is now gluing together how to get the best performance for let's say solution that you have, but also getting for the bang for your buck. And that feedback mechanism, I hate to say, I don't think any organization really does it well. So that's where I would say that the C-suite really can make that change by helping people talk to each other.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the principle of what DevOps stands for, which is crossing silos and connecting and shortening that process. I had an explicit project out at Cisco where they were struggling with this, and we helped them save literally tens of millions of dollars through an automation feedback loop for their teams, because each one of them is done in a very siloed way. And this team would be great in automation and optimization, but the next team, they're in the Stone Ages. But if they can share these tools and these approaches across silos, they begin to see these economies of scale come out of their efforts and begin to see the bottom line change. And that's where the containing of the cost starts coming in, is when we start thinking smarter with how we're approaching our automation and our optimization efforts. So thank you, I appreciate that. So the next one. This slide is probably the one I spend 90% of my time talking about in the market today. I love talking about automation. I love talking about designing and architecting solutions. I really enjoy that part of my job. And yet this is where I find all the conversations are going right now. I just got to say, I've seen a huge sea change in the last 18 months with this towards this direction. So with how easy it is to adopt cloud, because the reason people in your organizations are adopting cloud is because it started off, IT wasn't as responsive as they needed to be to certain demands and needs of an organization, right? And a BU. So somebody said, hey, listen, I need to build my project. I need to get this done. This deadline's approaching. I'm just going to swipe my credit card and then I'm going to get going and get my project done. That got out of hand real quick. Okay. They had these, we have an account sprawl. So we have a master payer accounts with each one of these hyperscalers that are out there. And everybody creates their own little version of that. And everybody has their own idea of like, okay, this is my budget, so I can spend it on what I want. And so when you skip back up to, even I found in procurement that there is a problem understanding and rationalizing what the company is spending on any given hyperscaler. You have to go above procurement level to really gain a little insight into that. One of my customers, I was having lunch with him, and as I was in his office, I was talking to him and I said, how much do you spend on cloud? And this is the main guy over IT. How much do you spend on cloud every year? And I had something in my back pocket. I had his cloud health report. He did not have his cloud health report. So, and I am very good friends with this gentleman. And so we banter back and forth all the time. And he told me a number. And I looked at him and I said, do you know that your real number is 5x what you just told me? And he just looked at me and he says, you're messing with me. So I pulled out the report and I put it on his desk and he was blown away. I got the cloud health report from the cloud health team, I'm also good friends with at that time. I probably shouldn't be saying this, honestly, and this is being recorded. But that goes to show that this is not unique. Everywhere I go, I'm having this experience where the only people who really understand how much you're spending on cloud is at the very top level, and that's if they do the report, right? And so this is a big issue for a lot of customers and a lot of companies out there. So what are some ways leadership can proactively get ahead of this shift in spend and curtail waste? And then when is the appropriate time to introduce and advocate adoption of FinOps provisions and initiatives into your organization? Jeff, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, find your boss and get his credit card. Problem solved. No, it was a big problem for us, certainly. And going from that sort of CapEx spend to OpEx spend can really like mess with finance guys' heads. So that's fun and interesting. So yeah, there's really two sort of tectonic shifts, right, that happen when you go to cloud. One is you go from CapEx to OpEx, and that like changes a lot of things around budget and finance and all that good stuff that I don't understand nearly as well as I should. And then one of the things that helped us is getting from more of a project-based costing model at sort of the lower levels of the budget and the finance. And they need to start understanding the product, right? This is a product. It's not like you buy a server and then you sort of depreciate those costs over like 5 years, right? And then you buy it again, right? We're churning through this money every single day, changes the way they think about it. Now it's like you have to align those people that used to think about things as project that had start dates and end dates and had very finite costs that got, depreciated over time. And now it's, this is money we spend every single day in perpetuity. And then we need to think about this differently, right? We need to think about this line item differently. It's no longer just sort of finite in time. And then what was the other one? When is the appropriate time before you pull out the credit card? Yeah, start engaging those financing. So we kind of report up through the CFO. He's very interested in cost. So, you know, if you're the CIO or whatever, and you don't know what your cloud spend is, and especially if you report up to the CFO like our CIO does, then like you're in a bad position already. If you don't understand that shift, you don't understand what you're spending every single day, then you know you might not live very long as a CIO.
Yeah, again, our organization is very product driven. So for us, it's in the beginning, we always do financial analysis and modeling right from the get-go for everything that we do. So we already know as an organization, we have a budget, set budget, but not more budget. Think of it more like for us costing. We already know what the costing is going to be. And in order for us to be profitable, we know we have to remain within that costing. So for us, it's really from the beginning. I'm going to flip it around a little bit. It's really from the beginning area. But also it's important to relate to the developers and the people, maybe not the entire financial model, but at least the guardrails and also some of the framework from a high level. So at least there can be some understanding of that. You can have more people watching it. The problem also with a lot of hyperscaler growth too is it's if you don't do it this way, a lot of times it takes the CFOs a while to catch it, right? So even your CFO or your VP of finance or your corporate controller, it might take them a while to actually see the trend, see the jump. It might take them a couple quarters, even so there's a delay there. That always occurs. So if you don't front load it with some effort in the beginning, you're going to pay for it at the end.
Boy, do I have some more stories about this. I think there's a couple of different ways of looking at this. Number one struggle that I see with organizations with FinOps is not CapEx versus OpEx. I think people get that. It's my total IT spend was 100 million. I can shift it from on-prem or virtualized into cloud as long as it's under 100 million. Nobody cares. It's actually what the problem is that we spent so much time playing around with the numbers and shoving it into somebody else's budget, so it doesn't show up in the 100 million, that when you move it to cloud, it falls under your budget again. And so then you suddenly go over and it's like, oh, well, no, that was shoved in that cost over there. It's not in my budget. That's where the money should come from, or it needs to be reallocated. That's where the sins of us burying all this stuff to try to show that we're managing costs and pushing to different accounts. That's really what bites you in the butt, because net, if the business funds the server and then you fund the IT people, the business took that cost, it's CapEx that's booked, but you're only supporting it. Now you're taking on that infrastructure as well. It's in your budget. You're shifting from on-prem out. So, what can you do about these sort of things? I think the first thing is talk to your hyperscaler. I had an incident where I was working with a central agency that was in the middle of all the COVIDs. They were given all the money to do everything they did, and there's 27 of them. I happened to work with 7 of them, and I was working with Microsoft to try to understand the spends in Azure and AWS and GCP. And it was, let the scientists do their work. They're very brilliant. Don't get in their way. They're saving people's lives. I was working with one group, and I'm like, hey, give me the list of the top users of the Azure environment. One of my group was number 2 on the list. Their thing that they would always tell me is, we are not a cloud shop. We have not adapted the cloud. We have some solutions that are there, but we're not cloud. And I'm like, you do understand that you are the 3rd largest consumer or 2nd largest consumer of all of the different entities under your agency. And you're spending probably $30,000, $40,000 a month, and you don't even realize it. So, and where their cost was storage, they were using it. Somebody made a great idea and said, oh, we got unlimited storage, I'm just going to shove it there. As I'm saying, if you let them have it, they're going to do it. But you need to kind of watch it and understand your spend and benchmark yourself and try to understand where you're going. Getting ahead. Okay, we got that. Advocating for FinOps. I think the advocacy is going to be to having the conversation with the CFO when they basically said you've spent your budget and you're cut off, and you can't really cut yourself off. You're now going into the situation where you're begging, pleading, and moving money around. You need to do it from the beginning. You start with what is your plan? What is your budget? Understand that it's going to be very variable when it first starts. I mean, you're going to be off by 100%, then you're going to be off by 50%, then you're going to be off by 25%, and it could be low or high, and it can change any day. And the idea is it's sunk cost, and you're spending all of this time and money to learn how to do it right. And that doesn't happen day one, but you need to have the right feedback mechanisms. The telemetry coming off of this is not just packets and number of transactions and everything else. So telemetry is also your spend and how that is actually being done. And that helps you put in the right guardrails. That helps you put in alert. If you put in a guardrail that basically says, when you hit this much in storage, stop spending, well, guess what? You just broke your production application and you just took down your business. Don't do that. Put an alert in. So hard limits are not a good idea. So the FinOps from the beginning, and I think the simple lesson is your boxes don't need to be on all the time. You can spin down your workloads. You can do all of these things. And I've seen 25, 30% reductions overnight just by turning these things off. And when you're talking about $100 million spend or $50 million spend, or a $500,000 spend, 25% is a lot of money. And that gives you a little bit of more wiggle room as you go forward and really be able to, deal with the variations of this. Accountants don't like variation. They gave you an accrual. You have X amount of money you're supposed to spend. If you burn hot, they're going to yell at you, and you got to figure all that out. Well, part of it is plan, understand, get control of it from the beginning, understand that you're going to have some variance. Take your bosses out for drinks and say, hey, we'll fix it next month. And, it's a people problem. I mean, when it comes down to it, this is about learning, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. The idea is you're learning a new skill as an organization. So, just book it in a little bit, sandbag it, and you'll be okay. And understand that you're going to be wrong, and it's perfectly fine.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. One thing from my perspective is doing this now for 6 years. It's they hear the idea of don't give people fish, teach them how to fish. When somebody complains about their budget in cloud, don't just give them another Power BI dashboard to pull the information. There is a wonderful RBAC role called cost management reader. And you can give that to any vice president who's in charge. You put it at the top level of their subscription or their resource group or whatever you want to do. And now you give them the ability to do their own fishing, right? Because they're going to spin it in whatever way. They can now go through using the own tools, and they can't blame you. They can only blame their own teams for how they do this, right? It's all about, visibility. It plays, in one respect, cloud is really, really good in the fact that what do most executives think, right? Inside of the business, they always say, that IT is like owning a boat, a hole in the water you pour money into, right? It's something that they don't know. This gives them absolutely as granular level that they want. It may be really expensive, but they have the ability to reel it back in. So to me, it's actually teaching them how to do their own financial analysis. Why not, right? Why not go into your own, checking account and see exactly who the hell was buying stuff?
Thanks, Mark. That is actually right out of FinOps best practices. So you're dead on with that. Amit, can I have you chime in here? Because I think you have something to say.
Sure. I think one of the other things in a highly matrixed organization is how to tag different teams to different instances, etc. So tagging is one of those things which we have really found helpful. So whenever at the end of the week, month, year, we actually calculate costs, it just helps us a little to figure out, yeah, there's an ROI because they generated a certain amount of revenue, but they also used up the system a lot. So when we are actually talking to our president and the boards, At that point, it simplifies the story when we are telling them that, yeah, there's infrastructure costs, but we also generated X amount of revenue. So that's definitely helpful.
Thank you for that. If I may just tail on to that. So for those of you who don't know tagging, it's basically coordinating and identifying what the resources are tied to when you allocate them in cloud. Now, I've adopted an approach. A lot of people spend a ton of money on tools to help them understand where their spend is. And these are FinOps tools, and most of them do reporting. And that's great. But how many times I get into somebody who's got a reporting tool that tells them how much they could be spending, but doesn't actually help them achieve those savings. So the key here is to adopt, so I call that passive reporting. And I say you have to move up the ladder, if you will, to active FinOps. And active FinOps is adopting the tools and the procedures and the governance practices that automate the savings for you. They affect the changes for you, because if you have to go across functional, across silos and beg every department to do this or to do that, you can show back and charge back all day long. But the idea here is just make it easy for them, do it for them. And so if you implement that automation and governance up front, you can identify and realize the cost savings rather than begging and pleading people to adopt a new philosophy. Now, FinOps should be started at the beginning of your journey. I totally agree. So why don't we do it for them by automating it into their processes, automating it into the governance structure, making sure that when they're consuming cloud, they're doing it with FinOps already built in. So that's some of the discussion that takes us to the next level.
Just like to testify. I worked with Mark for the last 21 years, and I asked him about that question about, hey, can I get access to some of these Power BI reports? He flipped that role to me and he says, here, pull the reports yourself. But yeah, I mean, that was like, again, that was our philosophy, teach each other how to fish. But Ian and I and Kevin were having a conversation in preparation for this panel conversation. We talked about this a little bit and exploring different ideas. And I've worked in IT for quite a few years. And if you kind of look at the trending of 12, maybe 13, 14 years ago, and when there was a huge investment on our networks spend and on the edge, developing our networks on the edge. And you look at the telecom expense management, and you kind of see that trend analysis. And there was a lot of companies going that route to hire third parties and making the investments in telecom expense management and infrastructure management. And you look at now those expenses and investing in those financial operations and managing your expense management, you're going to see similar trends on that. And I just wanted to encourage people to kind of explore those ideas. You're going to get what you invest, you're going to get out of the monies that you put into it. So just look at that as the financial spend and the tools and the operations and leveraging third parties to help you with that. It's a very similar trend that I saw 12 to 14 years ago in telecom expense management. Did you have a question?
Are you guys, I just find it humorous, but I'm seeing a lot of the cloud providers and cloud companies now assessing for companies what they should put in the cloud. AWS is doing it. GCP is doing, I mean, everyone's doing it. I mean, seriously. And I don't know how people know. Are you guys seeing a lot of that right now? Because I sure as hell am.
Yep. Yeah.
And unlike the restrooms here, you guys figured out not one size fits all. Security cost.
Yep.
But if you let it go, you're exactly right. Take advantage of it. Next thing you know, you got a lot of services. So
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I got into an argument with a bunch of developers at OWASP 3 years ago, and they're like, DevSecOps. I'm like, yeah, okay, where's management? So think about what this is and what you're doing. Development, creative, create new solutions, build things out. Sec, lock it down, make sure that we don't get breached. Ops, keep the lights on. Who's supposed to optimize? And where is that coming from? And so there's a piece here that management is missing, and that communication layer that I'm talking about is that if we need to go into an optimization cycle, it's an optimization cycle on the development team. I'm not going for innovation. I'm going for speed and reduction in cost. So you're now going to spend your next couple sprints doing that. Same thing with security. You're going to be looking at how do I get the best efficiency and make sure that I manage the risk in the right place without spending more and more licensing and more agents and everything else. Ops, same thing is you want to get the efficiency out of it. Can I keep my uptime? Do I have the SLA? And that communication of management is trying to help make sure those people have the right information in it. And one of those pieces of information that is not fed back into your development pod, your security team, and your operations is, hey, we need to actually optimize to reduce cost or reduce variability. So if you don't feed the information into those teams, they're not going to look for it. So I would 100% say that DevSecOps is great. Management's sitting on top of it. The communication channels need to be there, but they're only going to be able to make changes on things that you feed them information on. And we typically don't submit a financial information into those teams and create responsibilities there. So I think that's fundamentally how you kind of change this sort of dynamic that he's talking about. I can spin up another service, there's no cost to me. Where it's on a credit card, it takes months for the people to figure it out. I'm just going to keep on going until I'm successful and hope that the best of breed takes over. Really inefficient, happens every day. Security, how the hell do I secure a new function that's coming through? And how do I optimize security when I'm getting hit with a whole new thing every day? So that's kind of that concept is that data needs to flow. And you need to, if you don't feed them the information and make them responsible for it, you have a problem. And that's, you can kind of have to fix it that way.
No, it was just to answer Grant's question, right? Where he was asking, basically cloud providers doing assessments, or all cloud providers are assessing your environment. But cautionary tale there is that it's only a snapshot in time. It doesn't tell you how to scale that out. Doesn't tell you how to optimize it. There's no feedback loop put in place. All you're doing is just taking somebody's current snapshot of time environment and giving them an evaluation of, you could do it on cloud provider A, B, or C, and here's your potential cost savings. But we all know that when you get into a platform, every platform is unique and there's advantages to every platform. So from a scale out perspective, it doesn't answer that question at all. It's just an assessment for a snapshot in time, and that's it.
Great. I wanted to say thank you to this panel for being part of this and offering some insights to the group here. And thank you for the invitation, Simon, really, and the board. I really appreciate this being here today. It's been enlightening for me. I hope it has been for you as well. We're getting a little bit of the hook right now, so we can move on. So I wanted to just, to desserts here. So yeah, so thank you.
So let me just thank Kevin, Jeff, Ian, and Cyber Trevor, is that right? What a fabulous conversation. And let's keep the conversation going. We're not being kicked out just now. We have the room till 8. The bar is still open. Dessert is here. Please stay around, chat to folks. So a little story for me about costs of cloud, right? So I went to university with a guy called Rowan Atkinson, who you may know, right? So, but in addition to me being Mr. Bean, he was also in an amazing program called Blackadder. I don't know if you've ever seen Blackadder. But one of my favorite scenes is, and it reminds me of Cloud Spend, right? One of my favorite scenes is he's talking to Baldrick, who is his unfortunate sort of servant guy, right? And he's lamenting about bills, right? And he goes, Baldrick, sometimes I feel like a pelican. Doesn't matter which direction I turn, there's always an enormous bill in front of me. Which is a bit like cloud. Anyway, please give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you so much. And whether you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or any other holiday celebration, a Festivus, have an absolutely fabulous one. Thank you for making this year so successful for SIM Arizona. Please do consider joining if you're not already part of us. As you can see, it's a great community. It's great fun. Have a great journey home. Do be careful if you're to the bar again, right? But enjoy yourselves. We have the room for at least 30 minutes. Stick around, enjoy. Have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you so much.